Good morning and welcome. It is August 1st, Thursday, and you have joined me. I'm Bob Pace, and we have a guest here, Christopher Griffith, and he right now is from um, Oceanside, California, and his case was in Florida. He grew up in foster care, and he had children, and they were taken. And we'll talk more about his story shortly, but I need to go over a couple things. You've reached the right place. This is How to Fight CPS with Bob Pace, and stop taking your children. We're going to keep your children. I know how important a family is, and so um, I hear you. I feel for you. It's a warm welcome to all of you. A warm welcome to all of you. Okay. Um, Now we have some people that have come in. We have links to all the rooms that talk about CPS. So they've all joined me. There's 8 of them. So we have everybody in the house except for my regulars. Now, to interact with this podcast, first step is to be in this room and listen. That's the first step. That's the important step. You don't have to participate. If you have a question, I'll tell you how to get that answered. But just being in the room is really important. I'm glad you're here because hopefully I've been in CPS. I've been fighting for 15 years. My case was a horrible one. And my children were trafficked and stolen by CPS. They are corrupt. They are a terrible entity, and I'll talk more about them. Now, besides being in the room, you can text in a comment um, to me that I'll see, and I'll share it with the room. I don't think the room can see all the comments that come in, so I'll share it with you. So when type in a comment, make sure it's about CPS. We only really want to talk about child protection system. When I say CPS, I'm talking about the entity the government has made as a branch of social services that deal with protection and neglect of our children and family reunification. So please have your questions pertain to that. Also, please show your name, city, state, or country. The reason why I put country in there is because we have right now, I think, close to 14 countries that have texted a message from them. We have Bangladesh, we have New Delhi, India. We have Africa, and in Africa we have the province in South Africa. We have Mozambique, which is opposite Madagascar on the east side of Africa. We have Rwanda, which is near Lake Victoria, and that is in Central East Africa above South Africa. And they had a horrible uh, tragedy that happened in the 90s where the whole country, 1 million people were eradicated and 400,000 women were raped. It was a horrendous thing that happened, but
It
they've
was a
recovered
genocide.
today. They've recovered today. Then we go to the west coast to Liberia. A gentleman named Archie who texts in from time to time. He is a scouter. He handles his kids and he learns things from us, but he's from Liberia. Then we go up to Europe, and we've had England, Scotland, Wales, the United Kingdom call in, and then we've had um, Denmark and Sweden. And by the way, hello, Lori Hiller. She just came in, and today she wants to honor Tracy Smith. We have no idea where Lori is in there, but she's on my show almost all the time. And she puts different names of people. So I assume those are people that have had tragic experience with CPS. So I welcome Lori. Now, we go across the pond to North America and we have Canada. We've had several people from Canada on both the west side and the east side. We've had all the 50 states. I've talked to all the 50 states, including Washington, D.C. And that was recently with Washington, D.C. And it was a tragic affair for a young woman and her child. It was really, really bad. Then south of the border, I've had Mexico. In fact, they've even called in because they're trying to get their children back there in Louisiana. And then across the Pacific to the land down yonder, I've had Australia. So those are the countries that have text and messages. I welcome everybody all. You learn a lot, not only from here, but from wherever, um, you know, you have CPS. I was told last night that Morocco doesn't have CPS and they don't do adoption of children. I don't know if that's true. I'm still looking into that. But anyway, please be complete with your case. Try to start off with your family arrangement, whether you're a husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, lovers, or partnership, um, whether you're a single parent or both parents involved, whether the children have multiple parents or they all from the same parents. And then after you explain your makeup there of your family, let me know how many boys and girls and the ages they are. And then also what the accusations that you or your maybe your partner or spouse or whatever have been accused of. It was it abuse or was it neglect? And what were the details about the abuse and neglect? Also, um, you know, how did they get your children? Did they come to your home and you gave them to them? Did they demand the children from you? Did you come down to their office, surrender the children? Um, I just like to know how the children got. Were they in extreme danger and that's why they took the children? So if you can tell me those things, that'd be great. And lastly, I like to know where you're at on your case. And so that way you're very complete. We don't have to play a round of ping pong ball where we go back and forth. I ask the questions, you answer, I ask, you answer. It can take a very lengthy time. Now, that's the um, second way of interacting with the podcast. The third way is um, what we have here. We have Christopher, who's our guest. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, all you're going to do is uh, contact our show producer. Her name is Grace. She works hard behind the scenes. She keeps me in line and helps supports me. And then also, she'll help you get on the program by giving you the link. I'm broadcasting on YouTube. I'm using the StreamYard application, and you found me on Facebook. And I'm on 7 days a week, twice a day. I'm on at 10 o'clock in the morning Pacific Standard Time, except Sunday I'm on at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then every evening of the week I'm on at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so you have 14 shows to pick from that you want to be on. So you're going to email Grace, and her email is grace@vincentwdavis.com. It's grace@vincentwdavis.com. It's that little ticket in the bottom part of my screen. And all you have to do is put, I want to be on Bob's Monday show in the morning, or I want to be on Bob's Friday evening show, or his Sunday morning show. You just have to give me morning or evening and one day of the week. And Grace takes care of the rest. And she'll explain to you how to be a guest and what to do and what not to say. And so she'll take care of that. And she's there during the whole podcast to help us and make sure everything goes right. That is the third way. Now, a fourth way to be on this podcast is that all you need to do is call my office number. And my office number is 626 698 0990. And I'll gladly take your call. And good morning, Shannon Broadway. Does it cost dollars to come on the screen as a guest? No. You can be on my show at no charge. It does not cost any dollars to be on my show. And welcome. Shannon has been on the show before, and thank you for coming this morning. Now, um, you have my phone number. That will reach my phone. It's my office number, and I can be reached during my show hours. If you call me before or after my show hours, I will send you a message that I can only talk to you on my show hours. So it's important uh, that you call between my show hours there. And when you do call in, please state your name and your location. And then you can talk about your case, just like explained in comments from the beginning, and bring us up to speed. And that's another way. So those are the four ways you can talk on this podcast. Now, I imagine you all are anxious to hear what Christopher has to say. His case was in Florida, and he now resides in Oceanside, California. But Christopher, can you start when you were first in foster care and then bring us up to date through the situation that happened with your kids? Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, my story starts off actually before foster care. In my childhood, I was abused to the point of torture, forcefully drugged by my mother for the purposes of gaining federal funding. She was trying to get federal funds for me and was trying to claim that I was mentally ill so that she could get those funds. The doctors at the time, back in the 90s, they were really, really pushing these psychotropic medications on children. And I was one of those children that was experimented on. And so that made things difficult from the beginning because, my mom was not a good mom. My dad wasn't any better because he wasn't there. And it made for a very difficult childhood. I was begging to get out of my situation. I was notifying every person, every adult that I could get my hands on to let them know that I was being physically tortured, forcefully drugged, and being physically abused on a daily basis. And it didn't get me anywhere. Department of Children and Families repeatedly was made aware of the situation and repeatedly failed to intervene. And it I just felt like there was nobody who was on my side, and I was afraid every day that I would die. But what happened eventually is I was abandoned into foster care, and my mom failed at getting federal funding for me, and she ended up just abandoning me into the foster care system. But what the Department of Children and Families didn't do is take away her rights to be able to make decisions on my behalf. And so from foster care, she was able to direct my life and keep me from being able to progress with my education. And that made it was a whole nother aspect of it. I was accepted into Stanton International Baccalaureate, which is the most prestigious high school in North America. And I couldn't go because she wouldn't sign. So that made things more difficult. But what I realized once I got into foster care is that these foster parents and these foster homes that I was in and the group homes I was in, because throughout my time in foster care, I was in over 30 homes. I came to realize that the majority of foster parents are abusers. They're abusers of children. They're neglectors of children. They're exploiters of children. These people are not in the business for the purposes of helping a child for the most part. Many of these people are in it just so they can pay off their house sooner, so they can retire sooner, so they can pay off their Mercedes or their Cadillac in the driveway. And these kids are being neglected and suffering in these homes, many times being abused physically, sexually, mentally, and the majority of them are being forcefully drugged and falsely diagnosed with mental illnesses so that the state can generate more money out of this child that they're exploiting. So that's the situation that I realized as I was in after over 30 homes and dealing with obviously over 30 abusive situations, because I wouldn't have been going from home to home if these homes weren't abusive. After over 30 homes, I really realized the truth of the matter, that almost every foster parent is an abuser of children. And then once I got out of foster care at 16 years old, I got out through a. It was not a normal way. I was reunited with my mother, and then I spent a month living with her before her current husband moved in. He threatened my life, and then they abandoned me. My mom abandoned me for the third time, and my caseworker came to me with the option and said, either you can go back into foster care and we won't guarantee your placement, you could end up in any foster home anywhere in Florida, or you can lie to the judge, you can tell the judge that you're living with your mom and everything's great, they'll close your case, and then you can seek emancipation. And I went that route. At the time, at 16 years old, I'd had a GED already. I got that the day after I turned 16. Since I couldn't go get my good education at the Stanton International Baccalaureate, I gave up on public school. And the day after I turned 16, I dropped out and signed up for the GED. And I signed up for the GED. I passed with flying colors, got letter in the mail saying that I qualified for all sorts of scholarships because I had one of the highest scores ever. And then, but I didn't go that route. And instead of going to college, I ended up being a nonprofit board member. And I was voted on to the board of the Community Partnership for the Protection of Children at Jacksonville, Florida. At 16 years old, nonprofit executive, I started working on improving the lives of the children in foster care behind me. And I started working as an advocate to advocate for the children who are still in and the ones coming out, to try and better their lives and end some of these injustices that were happening to them. But my life as a nonprofit worker, board member, child rights advocate, it started growing, and I started gaining popularity. I became a poster child for foster care. I was in several PSAs. I got invited to another board, which was the under Florida Children's First, a nonprofit in South Florida. I helped establish through them the Florida's Youth Shine, which is a child rights advocacy board made up of children in foster care that still exists today. This was back in 2005. I helped found that board, and that's still in existence, and I've been in recent contact with them. But I helped found that board, started working on legislation to improve the lives of children in foster care, and I managed to be successful. I managed to get some legislation passed in Florida that got the locks off of the refrigerators and the cabinets in the foster homes, that created a system of checks and balances where anytime a child left a foster home, they were able to write an evaluation of and a statement as far as what happened in that foster home and why they think they left, and created a position within the state of Florida for people to read those statements and then act upon them if there is some abuse occurring within the home. And I felt accomplished with that. But what happened is, immediately after I got that legislation passed, I became a target for official corruption. And the police department in Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, started targeting me, and I was being gang stalked, being pulled over for no reason, unlawfully searched, and it got to the point where, at a certain point, I got run out of town. I was what's called white capping. I got pulled over for no reason. It was one of my 6 taillights being out. I was basically I was sexually assaulted by the police officer who made me take my unbuckle my pants, shine a flashlight on my genitals, tore my car apart, put everything in the parking lot, and just left it there. And then came to the apartment complex I was signing a lease at, and he stopped me from being able to get into an apartment. It forced me into homelessness, and it forced me out of town. It's another story in itself. But the gang stalking ended up forcing me into another town. I moved to a new town, and I established residency there, and the gang stalking continued into the new town. But it was also in Florida. So the gang stalking followed me to the new town. And I was gang stalked and harassed in St. Johns County, Florida, for years, up until the point where, I'm at today. And I've a lot of things have happened. But at the age of 19 years old, I became a father. And my oldest, I found out I was going to be a dad, and I dedicated my whole life to my son. And I said that, I would make sure that my son never went through the things that I went through. And when, that happened, I dedicated so much of my life to this child, but yet his mother was not dedicated whatsoever. And she ended up putting him in some dangerous situations. Her parents are wealthy, and I'm not. I'm a foster kid. And she's a woman with wealthy parents, and her parents always wanted to have a son, and so they wanted our son, and they started trying to get him from us when she was pregnant, and I wasn't down for it. So her dad knew that the way to get our son was to take dad out of the picture, because he is very good at controlling his daughter, but he couldn't control me. And so they started a scheme to try and push me and force me out of the children's lives so that they could use their money and influence in order to gain my oldest son as theirs. So, and they've been successful. So I haven't seen my children in 5 years. I have 5 children. They are 16, 12, 10, 6, and 2. And the oldest 4 I haven't seen in 5 years. This has been
Are they all with the same mom?
The oldest 3 are with my ex-wife, and then the youngest 2 have different moms.
And what's happened with those moms?
So with my oldest 3, their mother is like I said, she's controlled by her father. Her parents are wealthy. My daughter Elsie, the next child, she is the daughter of
Try not to use names of your children,
okay.
please.
Yeah, her mother is got some mental health issues, and then my youngest child, his mother is an alcoholic, and in all of these situations, I was trying to protect the children from the dangerous situations that were occurring with their mothers, and the retaliation for that was that I was removed from their lives. And one of the excuses that was used for removing me from these children's lives is that I was, in fact, in foster care, and that I was verified by the Department of Children and Families to have been abused and tortured as a child. Instead of recognizing that a person who is an adult who has children would want to protect those children to keep them from experiencing those situations. Instead, they used a false narrative in order to make it seem like I could have been a perpetrator. Now, mind you, there are Department of Children and Families records for each one of my children. And in those records, it shows that the abuser is not me. The abuser is their mother. But what they've done is the Department of Children and Families has manipulated those records and their outcomes in order to push an agenda that keeps my children in danger and keeps them away from their loving, safe father. Now, the initiation of all this, of the theft of my children, it all started back in 2019. The gang stalking that I was talking about was occurring in that town. And in 2019, I was falsely arrested and charged with 4 counts of child neglect, 1 count of resisting without violence, and 1 count of reckless driving. I was outside of my children's school, and my oldest son had to throw up. He threw up in the car. I left him outside of his school to throw up in the grass. I went inside the school to go get his brother, and I came back outside to find the police, and my son was gone because the police had taken him and locked him in the back of their car. They held us up for 45 minutes, threatened me with physical violence. I drove away with my other 3 children in order to keep them safe from these officers who were threatening physical harm against me. And they had no interest whatsoever in pursuing the truth. These officers had an agenda to destroy my life, to steal my kids, and to arrest me for anything that they possibly could. The gang stalking had been going on for over a decade in that town, and they got it. They finally got it. They wanted to see me in prison, and they did it. I did 2 years in prison for crimes I didn't commit. I was railroaded by the judge. The judge on the case violated due process of law.
You never had a paid attorney, right?
No. The public pretender was definitely not on my side. He made no effort whatsoever to prepare for trial. I told him I'm falsely in prison. I didn't commit these crimes that I've been accused of. This is criminal acts that are being done against me. And he refused to gather a single witness, a single piece of evidence. And even the evidence that the state attorney's office had, they had video evidence that showed that the statement that was on the record, that was their basis for their claim of child neglect, that the statement was false. They had the evidence, video evidence on record. That's exculpatory evidence in a criminal case. But the state attorney's office did not drop the charges, even though they had the exculpatory evidence that proved that the allegations were false. So the entire process, as we know, is completely corrupted. And what they do is they take children and they ruin these children's lives. And as they become adults, these children whose lives were ruined are the targeted people for their jails and their prison system. And then those children of those children end up being the next targets. And so it's a system of generational disparity for the generational prosperity of others. And it's a small group of people who are becoming generationally wealthy, and these people are attorneys and judges, and their children are attorneys and judges, and they're getting a generational prosperity off of the suffering of myself, children who are of the foster care system, and the children of those children. And it's an absolute class war. And they've gotten good at it. They've been doing it since the 70s. I mean, this is 50 years of practice and destroying children's lives for the purposes of increasing their slave population in their jails and prisons, because that's what it is. And the Amendment 13 back in 1865, Amendment 13 made prisoner and slave synonymous. And that's what people don't realize, is that prisoners are slaves, slaves are prisoners. It's the same thing since the 13th Amendment was ratified into our Constitution. And so in order, in any business, you have to continue to have a product, and the product in this case is us. We are the product. The poor people, the disenfranchised, those who are unable to defend their rights. We are the product of their business, and they use us and squeeze us for everything that we have, so that they can create a generational prosperity for themselves, their children, their families. They put their kids through college off of the money that we could have been using to put our kids through college with, but we can't, because we've had to give it to them for their extortion schemes, their racketeering schemes, and we lose our ability to earn when they keep us locked away and enslaved and imprisoned. So we can't create any type of wealth for our families. We can't create any type of legacy for our families. We can't do that because they've taken everything from us so that they can create it for their families. They can create that generational prosperity. They can have homes, their kids can go to college and everything else. And it's a scheme that is built this way for a reason. The generational prosperity of the few off of the generational suffering of the many. And the only way that we're going to be able to end this and fix this is with a total abolition. We have to have a revolution. We all have to stand up and say, no, we refuse to play this game anymore. We refuse to allow the Bar Association, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or the Blue Wall of Silence to continue to destroy our lives and our children's lives, so that they can create generational prosperity for themselves, create benefits for themselves, government benefits, which are better than anything that any of us can get, and salaries that are higher than any of us ever make off of our suffering. The system is...
Stop for a second, Chris.
Yeah.
I have a couple people that have called into the room here. Shannon's already been talking. Shannon says, sounds all too familiar. They're good at that. I'm sorry, Chris. Don't give up. Keep fighting, dealing with the same similarities with mine. Now, Faye Manny just came on, and she's from Richmond, Kentucky. And she was a foster child and in the system 5 separate times as a child. Her mom was bad. Her mom had DCF involvement. My mom caused me to have DC involvement. And DCF told me that if my kids had kids, they'd take his kids too, and I wouldn't be considered for placement.
Yep.
You see, one thing that's true is if you're a foster child, they'll follow you when you become an adult, and if you have kids, they'll take your kids.
That's the idea.
Shannon Broadway said, and use their children to do it too. Faye says, yes, exactly. I went through my whole life savings and 5 loans and went bankrupt fighting for her kids. She lost a daughter. She still has her son that she's trying to be a guardian because he has special needs. Her daughter, she had to make the choice, either keep her daughter or keep her son. And so the CPS system is corrupt. And I agree with what you're saying, Chris. Where did you get your education? You sound like you're a college graduate or a master or PhD. You talk very well. Your choice of words are very well. Where did you get your education?
I'm self-taught.
Okay.
So I read college textbooks starting in 11 years old. I started reading college textbooks. I didn't have an opportunity for an education thanks to foster care and my mom, where I was accepted into the Stanton International Baccalaureate program. Instead, I went to the severely emotionally disturbed class, which was literally a program by the education system created mostly for children in foster care. So all these kids in this severely emotionally disturbed program, it was like 90% of the children in the severely emotionally disturbed were children from foster care who are being heavily medicated. That's what severely emotionally disturbed is. And what severely emotionally disturbed is it's a class where you're in high school, but you're in one class all day long. And if the teacher doesn't like you or what you say or whatever, there's any type of problems, there's a guy they can call. And when they call this guy up, he shows up in your classroom and he manhandles you until he takes you into another area of the school and locks you up in a small cell that's maybe about 6 foot by 6 foot with a fire door and concrete walls around you with nothing. And they lock you in there as long as they feel like. That was what my high school experience was. So I didn't get an opportunity to have an education like most people. But what I did do is I never gave up on learning. So I still taught myself, and I had.
Well, you did yourself a marvelous job there. I would also like to point out that I have 6 children, and in their public schools, I attended them regularly. They had more than one teacher in high school because they had multiple classes. The single teacher thing was in middle school, and even in middle school they had other classes too.
Well,
So
and severely emotionally disturbed, even though you're in high school, you don't get to change classes. That's the point I was making. Is that in
really,
the SED program, you don't get that normal opportunity. There's no extracurricular opportunities. You
why
don't even
is
get a
that?
regular high school diploma.
Why is that in middle school and high school you can't change?
It's called the Severely Emotionally Disturbed Program, SED. And it's a program that they have in schools throughout the country for problem children who have mental health issues, who can't process their emotions properly. But
We
I
should have
was
an IDE program because if a child has those kinds of issues, the school by law is supposed to help them, not hinder them or lock them up or put them in the
Yeah.
atrocious rooms.
Well, what they do is instead they do lock them up. They put those children in a
I'm not
program
saying
where
they
they
don't,
don't get a
but
normal education. They don't get any education. It's an
yeah,
absolute waste of time, honestly.
yeah.
But our whole education system was based off of a deception. JD Rockefeller wanted a society of workers, not a society of thinkers. So he created this education system in order to make people to create people, adults, because if you get them young, you can train these people into be any type of person you want them to be. That's the mentality behind it. And he wanted people who would work. So he created a system where children would be forced to sit down, shut up, do what you're told, and we tell you how to think. And that's it. They don't teach them. Well, they teach them not how to think, but what to think. They teach them what to think. They don't want to teach them how to think. They want to teach them what to think. So they tell them what to think. They tell them to shut up. They tell them to sit still. They put them under fluorescent lights for 8 hours a day. And it sounds like prison. And that's exactly what it is. The schools and the prisons are exactly the same. It's just it's a place for people to be indoctrinated into the system and to make them realize that this is the way the system works. You do what we say and you give us what we want, or else your life gets worse.
Well, Faye agrees with you because she says her child was in that kind of a class.
Yeah, I lived it. It's
So
awful.
I never, fortunately, ever experienced that with my children or myself going up through the education system. But I'm appalled that someone hasn't. Now, did you think about talking to the governor or the representatives or the senators in your state?
Well, you know what? That's funny you mentioned that because I've called the governor's office no less than a dozen times, and I've never gotten through. I've called I've actually was in DC, and throughout the month of June, I organized an event in DC to try and fight these injustices. I was out there with this guy getting beat up by the park police in front of the Lincoln Memorial. 6 officers beat me up and arrested me for telling the truth about this. But yeah, I was in
Why
DC.
would they? Why would these? I mean, I know that there are lots of bad police. I've experienced it myself. But why would the police want to beat you up? I mean, what were you doing that was so awful?
You can watch the body cam footage for yourself. I was actually wearing a body cam the whole time, so you can see the entire footage. And I've got other angles as well. It's all posted on my pages. And the body cam's actually gotten over 10,000 views so far. But I was out there talking about how the police are not on our side. The blue wall of silence exists. The blue wall of silence is a secret code amongst officers that they won't report each other's crimes and that they will protect other members of the government, which they do. I was talking about how the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have been working together to institute statutes, codes, ordinances, policies, and procedures that violate the rights of myself, you, and everybody else for the purposes of generating revenue and slaves since the 1865 when the 13th Amendment was ratified. And I was talking about how children are being stolen in the USA from their parents, and that there is a scheme in place in the United States in order to steal children from their parents so that they can create a revenue stream off of the suffering of families for their generational wealth off of our generational suffering. And it was, when you go through and you see the video, you can see what I was doing was exposing corruption. And what do they do to people who expose corruption? What happens when people expose corruption? They end up being arrested, beat up. They end up being discredited. And oftentimes they end up being killed. While I'm sitting right here, I've got a gun on my desk. I've got a bulletproof vest in my closet. The amount of fear just doing what we're doing, you have to recognize Nancy Schaefer was murdered over this.
Yes, she was.
So if Nancy Schaefer and her husband,
Georgia, right?
Georgia Senator Nancy Schaefer, she was murdered over her report, The Corrupt Business of Child Protective Services. Right. And she's only one of at least a half dozen people that I've got their names written down on of martyrs for this cause. So
now, Shannon, who's a guest in our show here, has been on for a couple days. She's a Cherokee woman, an Indian. And what's happened is that the tribe has got out of hand. The Attorney General of Oklahoma, they are trying to make her do things because she's trying to expose them. This is Shannon Broadway. She's from Oklahoma, and she's a Cherokee Indian. Oklahoma has 7,700 square miles of reservation, and apparently they control the police and control a lot of things in Oklahoma that I was surprised about. But she has similarities to you where she has been accosted and made to maybe lose her children and stuff. So she is in here listening, and that's Shannon from Oklahoma. Now,
yeah, there's a lot of that. So in the tribes right now, I keep hearing it. I've got another mom who's in one of the local the tribes here, and she said that they're turning the tribe into a sex trafficking ring. They're stealing children away in order to sex traffic them.
The tribes, see, there's 547 federal recognized tribes, and such as the Lakota Sioux, the Crow, the Navajo, the Apache, the Comanche, the Cherokee. There's so many tribes there. Now, how it's supposed to work, there was an act in 1978 called the ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act. And what that did is that for over 100 years, Indian children were taken and forced into adoption right away. There's nobody helping out the Indians. And it took 100 years for this act to happen. But what it does, it forces the child protection system to contact an Indian tribe. If you are asked, they're supposed to ask the parents, do you have any Indian blood in you? And if the answer is yes, they have to contact the tribe or tribes and see if they're registered or could be registered. And if they are, and they could, then they have to immediately turn over the children to the tribe, and the tribe in turns is supposed to help with the family reunification. They'll put them with a family, Indian family, and they'll work through it. But the tribes are supposed to be helpful. Apparently, the one in Oklahoma has got a hand. They actually call their agency the Indian Child Welfare, and that Indian Child Welfare in Oklahoma runs the police and so forth, and it's really corrupt there.
Yeah, it's corrupt everywhere.
Yeah, I hear from you saying that because I've heard of horror stories because I talked to so many people. And Faye has gone and talked to governors and representatives and so forth, and she's been pushed aside. She did say she saw your video of them uh, beating you up, and I
I'm still
completely
hurting. I mean, I've got a
understand.
rotator cuff injury,
Yeah,
tendonitis. I
that
had a
they stalk
concussion.
and they harass her acute autistic son. Her son has special needs, and the local police there in that county um, attacks her son. Actually, he was at Eastern Kentucky University, and they were chasing him. He fell out of his shoes. He stumbled and fall. They are harassing the mother and the child all the time. So Faye knows, Shauna knows. You have people in this room that are very supportive of you doing that. Faye says we need to shut them down, silence, and even uh, alive people,
Yeah,
unalive people.
yeah, I get it. No, I get it.
And then
My
Shannon
what I'm thinking
says,
right now, because
and
I
Shannon
try to
just
look. 'Cause
said,
we know the problem is. We know that the problem is big. We know that the problem is massive. We know that children are being stolen. We know that we're all victims of slavery. We know that that none of this could happen if it wasn't for our rights being violated. And so, what I'm looking for now is trying to find solutions, because that's what we know what the problem is. But what is the solution? How do we fix this problem? And that's the part that we really all need to be focusing on, is
well,
what
there's
is it
been a
we need
lot
to
of
do to
groups
end
that have tried to, like in Sacramento, California. They had a rally there. But the problem is it takes money. And you're going to have to petition Congress. Congress is the only place that the
Yeah, well, they don't want to
open
hear it.
business. You
So
have to get someone on your side to bring you to the floor, because in Congress, they had a couple of months ago, they had all the CEOs of the social network company before them, because they're asking the CEOs what are they doing to protect the young children on the internet. And so all the CEOs really couldn't say much. Elon Musk did apologize, but the problem that I think that the Congress people forgot about are the parents. Right now, you have parents that don't care where their children are. That give them a phone that connects them to the internet in the fifth grade. They are given. The parents need to control the children. The
mhm.
parents got to instill discipline, and they got to be honest. And if they need help, they need to seek help. And agencies that give help have to do the help. Your problem is you got a very broken system, and it can't be handled overnight. And I wish I could wave a wand and make things better,
Well,
but
I
it's
mean, I've
not
got some
gonna do that.
ideas.
I know you do, and you sound like a really smart man for having a lot of these good ideas. And Shannon says just told Bob how they're trying to do that. Ignore that call. Okay. And then the minute she tried to expose the Cherokee tribe, they came after her and her children. Now we have a new person here, not a new person. He's been here before. His name is Jose. Um, let me see. Where are you, Jose? Diaz. Welcome, Jose. A corrupt family court judge with falsification of evidence from CPS and other attorneys stole the innocent child from an innocent mother. And I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know where you're at, Jose Diaz, but if you could tell me your city or state you're from, or if you're from another country, that's good too. Sean and further said the Cherokee Nation is corrupt all the way, and have over 2,000 pieces of evidence she has of all the documents that she's been investigating, and she wants to expose. It's 12 years, 12 months. The more I do worse, they come against her. She tried to go to the news media, and they threatened to take away her children. And
Well, you
then,
have to recognize that this is the what's happening here, and we can see that it's happening all over the United States. It's happening within the tribes. It's happening all over the world, and every country that we can even communicate with. Every country that we can communicate with, we're getting the same complaints. I'm getting complaints also from all over the world, and recognizing this, of course, the way for us to be able to fix this globally is to start locally. But locally, I mean by the United States of America. And, in order for us to be able to fix as the United States of America, one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get rid of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, because we know that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are obviously in on it. There's no way around it. There's no question. They're in on it. The bar associations the bar associations are the leaders of all of this criminal enterprise. Every single judge is a member of the bar association. Every single attorney is a member of the bar association, and their oaths and their duties are to the court and not to the people. And that said, the injustice occurs. Every time we walk into a courtroom, we're walking into a crime scene. Every time we walk into what's supposedly a court of law, we're walking into a criminal enterprise, and we're laying our lives before a criminal enterprise to let them make decisions on how they're going to exploit us and extort us for money. It's definitely not a system of law or justice or anything like that. So we have to recognize who the real enemy is to start with. And the enemy is the Bar Association, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the Blue Wall of Silence. And when we recognize that those are the enemies at hand, then we can start to focus our efforts on abolishing these enemies, on stopping these enemies. So as far as the Blue Wall of Silence goes, with our police, instead of enforcing statutes, codes, ordinances, policies, and procedures that violate our rights for the purposes of generating revenue and slaves, our police officers should be enforcing the rights of the people. There you go. A quick, simple way to fix it. Enforce the rights of the people. If your rights have been violated, call the police. The police help enforce rights. That's what it should be. Not statutes, codes, ordinances, policies, and procedures for the purposes of generating revenue and slaves. With the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, we need to get them out of power. You cannot have powerful elitists who are wealthy running a country, because when you have wealthy elitists running the country, they're going to be looking out for the interests of the wealthy elitists. They're not looking out for the interests of the people.
Right.
So stop voting for these people and stop giving them your money.
Yeah, that is really, I mean, you're talking on you're stepping kind of out of the CPS, what the show's about.
Yeah, but it's a big picture issue. The whole thing is the CPS, the family courts, the criminal courts. It's all related. It all goes through a judge.
No, it is related, but
it's all related. And the children who are victims as children become victims as adults. Right. They end up in prison, and that's where our mass incarceration is. 80% of these people who are locked up in these prisons came from foster care or from broken homes. 80%. So you can see the targeting. The only way to end it
is that we 5 people got to make it 10 people, and then 15, 20. We need to raise people awareness, and then we have to fight collectively. We have to petition Congress.
I've got a four-year plan right now. So my 4-year plan is I'm going to take this nonprofit and I'm going to use it to get the word out. So, but I'm also going to start another one, which is a political party. I'm going to start as a political party, and if we can get everybody on board with a new political party that is for our rights and against the corruption, then we'll have a place to align, because this has happened to people all over. So if we have a place to align, and if that alignment is through a political party, and it gets people out of the Democratic Party and out of the Republican Party and all of their bullshit that makes people think, hey, like, I need to vote blue, I need to vote red. Well, maybe there's an orange out there. Maybe that orange is really what's better for us. So, and if we can all at least get on, in one way that we can seriously affect it. So I want to start a political party, and I'm going to run for president in 4 years. So that's the plan right now.
All right. Well, that is certainly a big challenge. Now I need to catch up because I have about 9 minutes of things have said things, and it's important that they are heard there. We have Shannon, who is let me see here. Oh, Faye says the police silence people and unalive people and shut them down. That's what that was the meaning. Not that I think we should unalive people, just clarifying it. Faye further says there's no help for children, that DCF won't get involved. Anything with them involved would be corrupted. Jose Diaz, who's from Bonkers, New York, says we're protesting the Winchester County Supreme Court on August 16th for the abuse of our children by the family court organized crime. Shannon Broadway from Oklahoma says, power in numbers, me and Megan Ashero Dodge just discussed this. We all need help here. We are desperate. Something's got to change. We're running out of avenues and sources. And Jose, Faye says hello, Lori Hiller. Christina Reynosa, she's a new one. And Christina says, how old were you when you first went into a foster care? How old were you, Chris?
I was 12 years old
when I first went. 12 years old when you went into foster care. Faye went in at 4 years of age.
Yeah, I went in twice at 12 and then again at 13 or
right.
maybe 14.
Faye has 100% agreed. Shannon, who's from Oklahoma, said in the Cherokee Nation, only attorneys on the Bar Association list can work in their tribal courts. So even if I had the money for an attorney, unless that list, I can't use them. And all the attorneys I spoke to on the Bar Association list, once they hear who's involved, say it's too much a risk for them to take, or they'll get investments from property within the nation.
I'm in the same boat. I can't get an attorney to take my cases either.
Right. Faye says she was removed from my mother at 18 months. I'm sorry, that's 18 months, and placed into a relative placement. So she's been in and out of foster care since she was 18 months. She's been raped and molested, and it's really sad what she had to do during her years till she became an adult. She said that her mother was beaten into a coma in front of me at gunpoint, and that was why I was removed. Her mother dealt with drugs, and a person had, I guess she had owed him some money bit there. So Faye says she'd like to partner with you. So whatever movement you got going, Faye would like to hook up with you on that. And then Chris, how do we find you on Facebook? Shauna wants to find you on Facebook. How do you find you on Facebook?
Well, and if you look, Shauna, at the early comments at the very beginning, I think it's only maybe 6 comments in. You'll see multiple comments that show my Facebook accounts. I have 4 of them. So there's the Christabel Griffin, Christabel Archer, We the People, One Word Advocates, and We the People versus Tyranny. And
yeah, his Facebook account is Christopher Griffith, Christabel.
Christabel Griffin.
I'm sorry, Christabel Griffith, Christabel Archer, We the People Advocates, and We the People versus Tyranny. He has 4 Facebook accounts.
Yeah, I have to keep. What happens is Facebook keeps shutting me down because of the message that I portray. So they shut down my accounts all the time. So I end up having to, I'll have 1 shut down, and then I got to open up another one, and then I'll have 2 shut down. I have to open up a third, and it ended up where I have 4 accounts, and I just juggle through them as they're not blocked.
You don't think the current Republican candidate for president would be any help in our matters with CPS?
Well, he had an opportunity, and he didn't do it then. And and the thing is I'm a firm advocate for reelect no one. And, I'm a firm advocate, reelect nobody, because obviously if they were good, then things would be different. You have 4 years as president to be able to end slavery, to end child trafficking, to do something positive for the United States of America. But instead, we just got air. That's all we got, a bunch of hot air. And, anybody who thinks anything different, my situation has not improved any. The our wages haven't improved. The inflation has not improved. Everything is getting worse. We're living in a country where we have a fiat currency, so literally our dollars mean debt. Every dollar you have is a debt somewhere else. It literally has no value. Our national debt increases constantly. There isn't even enough money in circulation in order to pay it off. We'll never be able to pay it off, which makes our entire country a debt slave to the Federal Reserve. And it's all related. Again, it all ties together because when you follow CPS funds, ultimately they come from the Federal Reserve. You follow it, it goes through the state agency, through Health and Human Services in DC, and then it comes from the Fed.
Right. So, it's an $80 billion business that CPS is making off your children.
And they get it from the Federal Reserve. And it's all checked off by the President of the United States, and it's done off of executive order.
They get more money than they give at Ukraine. They get more money that the CPS system gets, and it's an $80 billion business. In my case alone, my 3 children, the county was getting $20,000 per child. That was $60,000. And if you took 100 families with 3 children, that'd be $6 million a month.
It's a big business. They're making Skrilla. They know exactly how to do it. They've been doing it for decades. They've been doing it since the 70s. They've perfected it.
Well, they're corrupt.
Of course.
That's the hard part about it. I don't know if you can radically do all that you want in 4 years. I'm hoping that the Republican candidate who's been in the helm once before will resume our border walls and keep people properly entering our country. I think he will continue the pipeline from Canada into the U.S. and lower gas prices. I know when he was there, I had a job. I was making more money. My food on my table was cheap. It isn't what it is today. But in reality,
I was in prison. I was falsely in prison while he was
in prison. And so, again, you personally were not being helped. And I'm sorry about that. But he works on corruption. And I guarantee if you're a fighter, he's a fighter, and you say something, he will do that for you. I'm not in here to make a pitch for the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. I don't want to be caught up in politics.
They're straight up criminal organizations.
But right now, we have a serious problem with our country right now.
Yeah, indoctrination. That's the problem. Indoctrination. They give us. Here's the deal. This has never been a country of 2 parties. Never. It is only through deception that the people think we only have red and blue to choose from. That is only a deception. And the media is controlled by the Republicans and the Democrats.
Well, we do have
those
other
organizations
parties.
Control the media, so they put that false idea in your head.
Yeah, we have other parties. It isn't all based on blue and red.
So where are they? Why don't we ever hear about any of them in any of the standard media outlets?
We do. Right now, we actually have a third party running for Kennedy. Robert Kennedy,
I know,
is the third candidate. Now, he may not win, but there is change. There is things happening. He wants to run. He has the money, and he wants to run.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to have money.
Yeah, you got to have money. That's
bull. That's crap. The fact that the only people who ever get to be in power are people who are already rich means that the people who are in power are going to be looking out for the rich. And until people get that through their dumb heads, it is never going to change. You have to understand, if you put rich people in power, they're going to look out for the other rich people. Stop voting for the rich.
Yeah.
Stop.
Well, we can't really do the politics.
The most underrepresented class in Congress is the poor. There's not one poor person in Congress ever.
Where are you at with your children right now? Where are you at?
They're kidnapped. I haven't seen my babies in 5 years. Right now, there is a human trafficking order out in Florida. What is the reason
why they are kidnapped? What did you do that get them kidnapped?
I didn't do anything. They stole my kids.
Well, what did they allege you did?
They falsely imprisoned me for trumped up charges and railroaded me through the system.
What were the charges?
Child neglect, reckless driving, resisting arrest without violence.
Okay.
A child advocate arrested for child neglect. A lifetime child advocate arrested for child neglect. I did not neglect my children in any way. And if you ask my babies, daddy was protecting them, not neglecting them.
And how many children are we talking about now?
There were four. There were three in the car, and the police had one of them in their back of their car being held hostage.
That was the 4 children that you are.
I was a single dad and a business owner. I ran a taxi service in St. Augustine, Florida.
Okay, and you're trying to get the 4 children back.
I'm trying to get
my time. I'm not trying to cut this off, you guys, but it's now been 1 hour, and I need to close the show. It doesn't mean you can't talk again. I'm open to hear you again at 7 o'clock tonight or 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. That's Pacific Standard Time. I'm on 14 times, 7 days a week. I want to thank you, Christopher, for giving us a different perspective and sharing your case. You're very intelligent, and I think you might be successful what you want to do in 4 years. And I hope that you do. Faye, I want to thank you for participating in the room from Richmond, Kentucky. Shannon, I am so saddened by what you have to fight with the ICW, with the Cherokee Nation, and I'm glad that you come in here again. Who else did we have here? We had Christina Reynosa. I'm glad that you're in this room sharing your story. Jose Diaz from Yonkers, New York. You're welcome there too. Let me see, who else did we have? We have Lori Hillner, who is the room as a listener. And I want to thank you all for being on my podcast. Keep fighting for your kids. God bless you. And this is Bob Pace signing off.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.